I'm keeping on with my journey into Affinity Designer 2. I'm trying to keep things simple, but I'm not sure if it's more for me than for you. In this video, I'm going to introduce the concept of the artboard. The artboard allows you to work on 3 different designs at one time. I'm going to be drawing 3 flowers on 3 different artboards. Right now I have the new document panel open. On this panel, we'll check Create Artboard, since that's what we're going to do. Then we need to make sure that our DPI is at 72. Our page width is at 300. That doesn't really matter at this point, but it's just going to keep me on track. All I really want is to have a square at this point. Then we don't want margins, so we're going to uncheck Include Margins box. So our layout should look like this. Then all we have to do is to press Create Artboard. And that will be our artboard. Now if you notice, the artboard is taking up the whole document, but we don't want it to do that because we want to have 2 more artboards. So, all 3 of them need to fit on the screen. So I'm going to make this one smaller. At this point, it doesn't really matter if it's a perfect square or not. I'm going to move it over here, and then in order to get my 3 other artboards, I will go over here where it says Artboard Tool and click the Artboard tool, and then up here I'll punch Insert Artboard twice. And we have the 3 artboards that we're going to use. Now if you look over here, we have 3 layers. We have an artboard 1, an artboard 2, and an artboard 3. The first one we're going to do is artboard 1, just to keep things consistent. And the first thing that we're going to do is to, well, draw our first flower. So in the Shapes group over here, the first shape I'm going to use is the Heart tool. So I'll select the Heart tool and then draw myself a little heart like that. And I'm going to give it a fill. I think the fill, I might want it to be like a pinkish color or an orangish color or something like that. These aren't real flowers, these are just made up ones, so I'm not afraid that the local botanist is going to come over and attack me. So we've got our heart, and now what we need to do is to click on the node tool. And now we've got this node here, and we can pull this down to where we have our first 2 petals. And I think I'm going to make them a little bit thinner. And I will move them up to about here. Okay, now over here, notice that we have this labeled heart and it's our first petal. The next thing that we need to do is to duplicate this petal. So go up to duplicate. And then down here on the transform, we want to enter 90 for rotation, 90 degrees. Press enter. And now we have a rotated petal that we can move down. We'll need 2 more of these, so I'm going to right click and press duplicate, and then press duplicate again. So now our petals went all the way around at 90 degrees, so we don't have to worry about changing them around anymore. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't, but it just, gives you that, point at which I'm not going to change them around anyway. So, but it's just a lot easier that way, so you don't have to fiddle with all 4 petals all the time. Okay, now once you've done this, you're going to be selecting all the petals like this. And then you'll right click on this group and duplicate the group. So what you should have, since the group has been duplicated, is another set of petals. So there we are, and we can rotate them to fit the space so that it looks more like a flower. Now what we can do, or what I'm going to do anyway, is to maybe pick another color, maybe not that drastic, but it doesn't really matter. So I just pick another color, any color, and then I'll have my petals like that. Now, we need our flower to have an eye, so we are going to give it an eye, and then select another color, and I'm going to select yellow for that color so that we'll have a little eye. And again, if you wanted this to be a perfect circle, remember that you should hold down the Shift key so that it will be a perfect circle. Alrighty, so let's take a look and see what we have. Just a couple more things before we move on to our next flower. Let's select the center, and we want it to have a stroke. So we're going to click on Stroke and make sure that, change the width so we have a little width there. Okay, just arbitrary. So we have a stroke there, and now I want my flowers to have a little bit of a stroke on them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control and select all of my petals all the way down, and then go up to Stroke. See right here, Stroke is selected. Select Stroke over here, and then we'll give it a little bit of a stroke. Ooh, not that much. Just a little bit of a stroke. Okay, so now if we don't want to make any more changes on our flower is done, and to avoid confusion, we really need to group these because we're going to be doing 2 more flowers and we don't want to get all messed up. So we'll select all of our layers. And then right click and group. So now we have a group, and because we have a group, we can move our flower around if we want, like that. Okay, Artboard 2. So up here's Artboard number 2, and when you select the layer, you also select the artboard. And this time I'm going to draw me a little tulip. So we're going to select Heart tool again. To me this looks more tulipy. You can do all sorts of things with the Heart tool, believe it or not. So that starts our tulip, and we'll move it right there. I'm going to put a stem on it, so I don't want it to be right in the middle. Then I'm going to make our tulip red. I'm not a tulip expert, so I don't really know that much about tulips. So we have our tulip. Now what we want to do is, once we have the tulip, we want to move the center. Well, make sure the node tool, I guess I did select it. Make sure the node tool is selected, and we're going to move this halfway down. So now we have our tulip forming. Okay, now once we pulled it halfway down, I want this tulip to not be as pointy down here. Real tulips aren't pointy. So I'm going to go up here and select Convert to Curves. And that's going to give me a bunch of nodes where I can fiddle with this and make this a little fatter on both sides. Oops, not that fat. And then make this a little bit more flat down at the bottom. So we have a little handle that we can fiddle with and move that out. Or a little handle, we can move that out. And just basically have more of a, this looks kind of strange, have more of a tulipy type of a shape. Kind of like that. Let's click off of that and see how that looks. I think that's good to go. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I want one of the tulip petals to be behind here, so I need to make me one. So I'm going to go in here and select the tear tool, teardrop, and draw me a teardrop and flip it upside down. You want to go up here to this where it says flip vertical and then punch it and it will flip vertical, and then you can move it and line it up with your tulip. Now I know that looks a little weird, and it's because that it really needs to be behind the tulip. Well, not in the tulip, it needs to be behind the tulip, like that. Okay, so now we have our tulip flower part. Okay, now, one thing I want to do though is, since this petal is in the back, I think I'm going to kind of change the color on it a little bit. Oh, make sure we don't do that. We need to make sure that this is in the front because we're doing a fill, we're not doing an outline. And maybe darken this a little. See if that's going to change. Oh, maybe that way. I want to change the color on it a little bit. Okay, how about something like that? All right, now we need the stem on this thing. So to make the stem, I'm going to pick the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle down here. And move it to where it's in shape, right there. And I'm going to pick a color for that, a green type color. I'm not sure it much matters what the shade is. And notice if I click off of this, the stem is in front of the flower, and we don't want that. And that's just because that it's in the wrong place. Okay, there we go. So what I did is over here, I moved the layer to where it's underneath the tulip, and it really has to be behind the tulip. It doesn't matter if it's behind the teardrop or not, because the teardrop is also behind the tulip. So we need to make sure that it's behind the tulip. Okay, now, we want this to look more real, like a real stem. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here and go to the warp group. And on the warp group, we're going to go down here and click on perspective. So once we click on perspective, you'll see that we have these little circles. And we can move these circles so that we can make it bend. We can click on here and make more circles so that we can bend it a little bit more. And just kind of arrange it to where it looks more like a real bent stem and not like a straight stick. Okay, so let's click out of there and see what we have. So it's bent a little bit, enough for me. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to make some leaves. I really don't know if tulips have leaves under the flower, but remember, this is kind of a fake tulip, so it doesn't really matter. So to draw the leaves, this is just an excuse to use the heart tool again. We'll draw the leaves and make this a little narrower. It's green anyway, so we don't have to change anything. And then pull this down to where we have our leaves, and now we can duplicate this layer. So we duplicated our leaves, and so now we can move the leaf and turn it around to where we have leaves. Okay, to where we have leaves. Oops. I'm not sure why this did that. Somehow it locked. I don't know why. maybe I hit the lock on it. I'm sure if you haven't learned it by now, when you have problems, the problem is usually between the chair and the keyboard. And so most problems can be solved, although I have found that some of these Affinity programs can be kind of finicky. Okay, so there, our tulip is done, and now we need to group everything. So we'll select that, right-click, and form a group. So now we have that group. The last one is on Artboard 3, so we'll select Artboard 3. And on this one, I'm going to use a different shape. I'm going to come over here and hunt down the star tool. So here's the star tool. I'm going to draw my star and move it over here. It's going to be in the center. And for this one, I'm going to make use of this panel up here. And for points, I want to change the 5 to a 6. So now we have 6 points on our star. I also want this color to be like a gold. So we're going to have gold petals on our flower this time. And then I want to select the node tool. So that I can pull this down and make these more rounded. So no more star shape here. Okay, now after I've done that, I'll want to pull this radius in. So see up here where it says inner radius? You can adjust that. I'm going to just put in 4. I just picked an arbitrary number. So now that I picked 4, now you have your flower, or the outside of the flower. Now the next thing I want to do, I want an eye on this, so I'm going to click out of here, and I'm going to click the ellipse tool and make an eye on our flower. And I'm going to choose a red for that, I think. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, so let's see how that looks when we click off of it. Yeah, that's okay, but we're not done yet, because the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go in and hunt down something called a cloud tool, which is right here. And we're going to make the cloud tool. And so then after we pull the cloud tool out, we need to make sure that we have, well, we have nodes there already. So I just clicked off of it. Okay, so now we have a cloud tool. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull this in toward the center to make it like a starburst type thing. So there we have a starburst type thing. I'm going to fill it with green and then make sure that my move tool is selected, and I'm going to move it right there. But it's not going to be on top, it's going to be underneath. So I'll just move my ellipse tool up here, and so now we've got the ellipse tool up there. Okay, now let's see, I think that's the right size. So, here are my 3 flowers. I tried to incorporate as many Affinity Designer things that I could, well, without overloading you or me. So give this a shot and make your own flowers. They don't have to exist. I'm pretty sure mine don't. I have 2 mystery flowers and a tulip with leaves in the wrong place, but we're all just here to learn. And remember to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you can stay informed when my next video drops. Visit my Buy Me a Coffee page to stay up to date on my posts and to support my channel. And a plus, I've now started posting some of my Affinity projects on my page because I now figured out how to do that.